The following election 2012 debate is brought to you by the AARP, MarylandReporter.com, and hosted by Montgomery College. The AARP MarylandReporter.com 6th Congressional District Republican primary debate, moderated by Len Lazarek.
Hi, I'm Hank Greenberg, the State Director for AARP in Maryland. And I want to welcome you all, those in the audience and our candidates today, to the AARP Maryland, MarylandReporter.com 6th Congressional District primary debates. I'd like to thank MarylandReporter.com for partnering with us. We are happy to work with MarylandReporter.com to offer this opportunity to the voters in the 6th Congressional District of Maryland. We hope today's debate will give you an opportunity to take a closer look at these candidates and hear directly from them about the issues that matter to you. I also want to thank Montgomery College for hosting us today, and with that, I'll turn it over to Len Lazarek, the editor and publisher of the MarylandReporter.com and our moderator for today's debates. Thank you all.
Good day. As Hank said, I'm Len Lazarek, editor and publisher of MarylandReporter.com. We're a 2-year-old news website about state government and politics. This is a bit of nostalgia for me. My first congressional campaign that I ever covered was in the 6th Congressional District in 1976. It was a very hot primary between incumbent Goodloe Byron and Dan Ripley, who some of you may know. We want to thank AARP for co-sponsoring this with us and making it possible, and particularly Montgomery College for making the Globe Hall here on the Germantown campus available to us. The Montgomery College television folks are taping this debate, which will run 12 times on their cable channel beginning Monday night, and we hope on other cable channels as well. The debate will also be available on YouTube, on the college cable channel, and on the website of both AARP Maryland and MarylandReporter.com. We have a lot of candidates today, and here's how the debate's going to run. We want to cover as many topics as possible of importance to people here. I would like to remind people there is no flash photography. You can take pictures without flash. You can video by whatever means, as long as you're sitting in your seat. Please silent your cell phones. If your cell phone is in a bag, remember that it's in a bag and to turn it off so that in the middle of the debate the cell phone is not going off. The candidates will have 2 minutes to introduce themselves and tell us why they are the best candidate to represent the district. Then we will go into a series of questions. The candidates will have 1.5 minutes to answer these questions, which is not a lot of time. We have a timer sitting in the front row who will give them a 15-second warning. We're going to start with Delegate Kathy Afzali, and then we will follow alphabetically. The first question will be directed to Congressman Roscoe Bartlett. The next question will go to the next candidate in alphabetical order. Toward the end of the debate, using the same format, I'll be asking questions that have been submitted by members of the audience. Please fill out the cards that are available and pass them to the end of the row. We have some screeners who are not screening for topics necessarily, but just to make sure that the questions have general relevance, and I will be asking those questions. We'll have time for about 3 or 4 questions at the end. Please ask questions that are of general interest to the public. There will be no closing statements unless the candidates want to tack something on to the answer to their last question. Any rebuttal will be done using up their time in the next question. There will be no immediate rebuttal. For the sake of people who might be formulating some questions, here are the topics that we'll be discussing today. The candidates have not seen the questions in advance, but given that this is an AARP-sponsored debate, pretty easy to predict some of them. Retirement savings, Social Security, Medicare. I'll be asking about Afghanistan and Iran, energy and gas prices, immigrations, and then the questions from the audience. So the Republican candidates here on the stage are going from here. I was about to say my right and your left, but I couldn't figure that out on the go. Delegate Kathy Afzali, United States Representative Roscoe Bartlett, State Senator David Brinkley, Robert Koblenz, Robin Ficker, Peter James, Joe Christoforski, and Brandon Ripien. And so we'll start out with the 2-minute statement with Delegate Kathy Afzali.
Well, good afternoon, everyone, and I'm so thrilled to be here and actually excited that you took some time out of your Sunday to look into this very important job that you have to do on April 3rd, and that is to vote for the person you think is the best capable to represent you in the United States Congress as a Republican representative. I am a businesswoman, a Maryland state delegate, and as Mr. Lazarick had said, and I'm also a mom. And as a mom of 2 teenage daughters, I am truly afraid for their future. Each of my daughters, through no fault of their own, now owes nearly $50,000 as part of their share of our national debt. This cannot stand. I'm someone who gets things done. I'm not a passenger, I'm a driver. I am someone who wants to accomplish something in Washington. So here's Kathy's to-do list. Lower the debt ceiling. Pass a law that requires Congress to follow all the same laws that the populace has to follow. Repeal Obamacare. Cut these onerous regulations that keep our businesses from competing globally. Repeal and fair the tax code. The tax code is very complicated. It's complicated for businesses and it's complicated for families. And on top of that, energy. We need to look for and accomplish energy independence in the next decade. It is possible. We have natural sources of oil and gas that we can tap into in an environmentally friendly way, and it's very important that we do this for national security. For national security, we want to make certain that we are independent of the Middle East. So anyway, I'm Kathy Afzali. My website is kathyforcongress.com, and I look forward to speaking more about how I feel about issues. Thank you.
Congressman Bartlett.
I am Roscoe Bartlett. For nearly 20 years now, I've had the great honor of representing and serving the constituents of the 6th District. During all of my tenure in Congress, I've contributed from my congressional salary to scholarships in our schools. I think I've contributed $282,000 to the 9 schools in our district. I'm losing 2 of those schools, and I noted this because I want to thank the college for hosting us. I really want to thank AARP and Maryland Reporter for arranging for this opportunity to get before the voters of the 6th District. Since I'm losing 2 schools in my present district, that scholarship support will move to schools in Montgomery County, and this is, of course, one of those schools. Considering the accusations that I'm a liberal and recent mailers that say I'm a liberal, I thought it might be well to note my most recent endorsements. They're by the National Rifle Association, NRA, by Maryland Right to Life, by the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, by the Right to Work Committee, and I have the same scores in the American Conservative Union that Michelle Bachmann has. The bills that come before Congress are generally huge bills, hundreds, sometimes thousands of pages. It's rare that we have a single issue bill that we can vote on. In these big bills, there are mixtures of good things and bad things. And every time I vote no on a bill, I'm unhappy that there are frequently some good things in there I would like to have voted yes on. It's also true that the reverse is true. So I voted for a lot of bad things and a lot of good things because they were keeping other company. If my opponents want to get a big list, please come to my office. I'll give you a big list of all the things I regretfully had to vote against and all the things regretfully that I had to vote for in these big bills. Thank you.
Senator Brinkley.
Good afternoon. This campaign is a job interview. So I'd like to tell you that my public service began as a volunteer firefighter and an EMT. Twice I was elected to the House of Delegates, and I'm currently serving my third term in the state Senate. For my leadership on conservative and fiscal issues, my colleagues elected me to serve as their minority leader. And today I serve as the chairman of the Frederick County delegation. I have one of the Senate's highest pro-jobs rating. And as references, I'm endorsed by a majority of the Republican state elected officials in the district and have been endorsed by Senator Gene Rosser, Republican Central Committee Chair Mark Unkefer, and Gaithersburg City Councilman Henry Marafa, the only Republican elected official in Montgomery County. In my full-time job, I serve as a financial planner. But this election isn't about me, it's a referendum on the incumbent. So to paraphrase Ronald Reagan, are you better off? Are we better off? And is America better off today than we were 20 years ago because of something Roscoe Bartlett did in Congress? If not, then I ask you for your vote. Like many of you, I'm part of the 91% who disapprove of Congress, and not just the Democrats. It's incumbents who caused our fiscal crisis. I've supported Dr. Bartlett for 20 years, and I might have again if things were different. If things were better, or if Congress was listening. But Washington's inability to pay for its promises has only gotten worse, and during his time in office, our national debt has more than tripled to over $15 trillion. So it's time to stop digging the hole deeper. Again, I'm David Brinkley, and I would appreciate your vote on Tuesday, April 3rd. Help send a new generation of proven leadership, a pro-jobs record, and fiscal discipline to Washington. Thank you very much.
Mr. Koblenz.
Everybody hear me okay? Well, I'd first like to begin by thanking the Maryland Reporter-AARP, and of course Montgomery College for sponsoring and putting on this event today. I know it's a lot of work and time and energy, and we all appreciate it. But also, thank you all for coming today. It's very important that everyone stays engaged. If you think Martin O'Malley's second term is bad, wait until Barack Obama has his second term. There's going to be no checks and balances. That's why we need conservative, principled leadership in the House of Representatives. As I mentioned, my name is Robert Koblenz. I live in Washington County, Williamsport. I was born and raised in Frederick County. I live in the district. I believe that's very important. I believe that's a liability in the general election. I think the Democrats are going to use that as a tool and a leverage to try to communicate to the independents and advocate for their vote. I have 120 seconds to introduce myself, and within that time, the federal government's going to borrow $4 million on your behalf. I'm running because these issues aren't new. Spending, deficit, illegal immigration is not new. We need change, we need reform, we need new, bold, fresh ideas. I work full-time. I'm a project manager, senior systems analyst. I'm accountable for other people's money. If I mismanage my project's money the way that Congress has mismanaged ours, I'd be fired. I believe in term limits. I'm not running to be popular. I'll serve no more than 3 House terms. I don't want to serve as U.S. Senate or governor or any other office. I'm just running to advocate for the taxpayer because I think we always get the short hand of the stick and we're constantly overlooked. My name's Robert Coblentz, and you can visit my website, standwithrobert.com. Thank you.
Mr. Ficker.
Thank you. I'm Robin Ficker, born and lived over 60 years in Montgomery County. I had the question on the ballot in 2008 to limit your property taxes. It passed despite the opposition of every elected official in Montgomery County and the Washington Post. Of course, they're all Democrats. Here's what the National Taxpayers Union said at their annual convention. Your victory is a national record to pass a taxpayer protection measure at the local level against such difficult odds. This fall, I'm going to have a running mate. It's a question on the ballot to limit increases in your energy tax to the rate of inflation. The Democrats in this county said they would sunset it before the election, and of course, after the election, they chose not to sunset it. I've been leading the fight against the gas tax. You've heard my ads, gotten my emails, and my phone calls against this commuter gas tax that would have doubled Maryland's gas tax as opposed to the Virginia tax, driving our jobs to Virginia. I'm running against 3 Frederick County legislators, all of whom believe that Montgomery County should have an absentee congressman. And I've been criticized in other debates for saying I think Montgomery County, which has 50% of the voters, should have a Montgomery County congressman. The Democrats manipulated this seat. They moved 1 million Marylanders into new congressional districts to try to trick you into thinking we should have a Democratic congressman. Ms. Afzali can't even vote in this district as I did this morning. Mr. Brinkley can't even vote in this district as I did this morning. We need a Montgomery County congressman for this seat.
Mr. James.
Yes, my name is Peter James. I live over in Milestone. I'm a dad, a husband. I've started a robotic open source farm up there to try to solve some of our problems in energy and money. If you all haven't gotten your just money, make sure you pick some up before you leave. But, you know, it's said that if you keep repeating the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result, that's a sign of insanity. Some of my ideas will look a little insane at first, but we basically have a 2 paradigm. It's a flat paradigm, and neither one of them is working. They're both unsustainable. I want you all to go and look at Money is Debt video. There's one on my website, or you can Google it, Money is Debt 2. It explains how the money system works. And the focus of my campaign is to get you guys to understand what money is. Because your typical understanding, a lot of this, you know, pay down the debt. But if we pay down the debt, the money system will collapse. And that's what happened. We didn't have a rush of illegal aliens or a rush of taxes or regulations that caused the crash in late 2008, 2009. We had basically the banks stopped lending, and that crashed the money supply. So it's really very simple once you understand it. And we need to, and Andrew Jackson, who was a brute of a man, by the way, but he is the only president that had no public debt. He paid off the entire public debt. That's the #1 issue. And so you have to, rather than keep trying things that we know don't work, why not go back through history and find out when there's been times of prosperity and when actually there was no debt, like King Henry I of England and other times throughout history, and see exactly how that money system works and then implement that. So I think I've run my course. I look forward to giving you my health care plan. Thank you.
I presume at some point we're going to find out about the pillows. But now we're going to go to Mr. Christoforski.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank everyone for coming. Thank you to the AARP and the Maryland Reporter for hosting this important event. My name is Joe Christoforski. It's the long name. It's the one you're never going to forget. I guarantee it. I'm proud to be an American. I'm proud of the principles upon which our country was founded, but I'm not proud of our government. Congress today consistently abdicates its responsibilities under the Constitution. The President tries to find ways to circumvent the Constitution, and then we have a Department of Justice that picks and chooses what laws it wants to enforce, ignoring the laws that Congress passes. In 2008 and in 2006, I addressed a group, and I said that terrorism is a threat to national security, but it's not the only threat we face. I said the biggest threat we're going to face in the future is an economic one. The debt at that time was $9.5 trillion. Jobs were disappearing at an alarming rate. Unemployment was on the rise, and our energy policy was failing. Gas prices were starting to go up. I also said that there's a possibility that Standard & Poor's and Moody's would downgrade the national debt. 2012, what's changed? We're now facing almost a $16 trillion debt. Standard & Poor's has downgraded our debt rating, and Congress has established a committee in order to investigate the problem. The fifth or sixth committee to investigate the problem, and nothing's been solved. We need leaders in Congress. We need people in Congress who are going to be able to say, this is where we are, this is where we need to be, and this is how we're going to get there. We don't need cheerleaders. We don't need educators in Congress. We need leaders. I've got 35 years experience in healthcare, education, information technology, banking, finance, and emergency management. I've bought companies public, I've bought companies private, I've started companies. One of the companies I bought public and then private again is now part of one of the largest information providers of healthcare information on the internet, Healthy on WebMD, a $250 million company. I'm Joe Christoforski. I'm running for Congress, jtkforcongress.com. I ask for your support. Thank you.
Mr. Ripien.
Thank you. My name is Brandon Ripien. I too am proud to be an American, and I'm also proud to be a Republican. In the sense of disclosure here, I do want to say that my grandparents, my mother, are both members of AARP. I think it's a very important organization, and I look forward to talking about many of these topics today. And thank you to Montgomery College for hosting this event. There are two things that separate me from my colleagues up here. Number one, I do live in the district. It is an important issue. It is important to be able to vote for yourself. It is important to be part of the community that you're going to serve. The second issue is I'm the only candidate with personal experience operating a $100 million company. I am a businessman. I am not a career politician from Annapolis or from DC. I am from the real world. I understand the real world economy. I know for a fact how hard it is out there for folks to earn a living, and I have real world solutions. My platform is based on fiscal responsibility, free markets, individual liberty, and limited government. And again, I look forward to a lively debate on the issues today. Thank you.
Thank you all. We will start the questions with Congressman Bartlett. The candidates will have 90 seconds. They will get a 15-second warning from the timer. So the first question has to do with retirement savings. These questions, by the way, were developed by AARP and by myself with Maryland Reporter. Today, nearly half of all retirees rely on Social Security as their primary source of income. What policies would you promote to help people save for retirement? So this is in addition to Social Security, personal savings for retirement.
Well, clearly, if you have more discretionary money after you've paid all of your bills, you'll be able to commit more of that to savings. So we have to reduce taxes so that you're paying less taxes. We have to create an environment where businesses can flourish so that there will be jobs and there will be salaries that you can then invest in your retirement. Social Security, of course, is a very important retirement source for a number of people, and it is in trouble, as everybody knows. When it started, there were 40 people working for every one on Social Security, and now there are 3, and shortly there will be only 2. Rick Perry describes it as a giant Ponzi scheme. That's partly true. because the plan now really counts on people entering the workforce to pay for those who are now in retirement. There is no money in the Social Security Trust Fund. There are a lot of surpluses. All of that money has been traded for non-negotiable U.S. securities and spent. Lyndon Johnson moved Social Security on budget so that he could pretend that the monies we took from Social Security offset the deficit. Of course it does not. Americans need an environment in which there are more opportunities for jobs, so there'll be more income, so you'll have more to save.
Senator Brinkley.
Thank you. As I said in my opening statement, I do financial planning, and to that end, I do retirement planning for people. I also do estate planning for people. I've been doing that for over 30 years. And my partners here in Gaithersburg, we have an office in Gaithersburg, and so our experience professionally is in dealing with these exact issues that people are trying to deal with. And one solid example of what people could do, we could raise the threshold for which people could contribute to their IRAs. We certainly allow different type of products that people can put their monies into with the government's blessing, you know, to accumulate other type of savings. The Roth IRA, where someone can put money in and then theoretically get their money back out tax-free. But again, that rule is only as good as the government allows it to take place. Social Security was established as a basic safety net. But, you know, my generation is more concerned at this point in time that it's not going to be there for our benefit. My mom, when she was contemplating taking Social Security, she said, you know, I don't know that I really need to. I said, Mom, please do. It's our money that we're contributing. It's not money that's been banked by you or by Dad. And so there's some realities that we have to do to ensure a certain social safety net, but also ensure that people can bank up the monies for their retirement, because the biggest concern, they don't want to be a burden to their children, and they want to be able to pass some of those assets on. I think it's important that families and individuals have that type of choice and those type of opportunities. Thank you.
Mr. Koblenz.
Thank you. I think I agree with the Congressman. We do need to allow folks to have more money in their pocket to contribute to private accounts. A flat or a fair tax would start with that, a 12 or 15% flat tax. Allow people to have more money in their pocket. But in today's world, we have to remember that FICA is not a tax. It's a contribution. It's your money, and you put it aside to receive your benefits when you pay out. Social Security is going to run out in the year 2037, so when folks my age and slightly older and those entering the workforce aren't going to have Social Security as a safety net for retirement. I believe that we should allow folks to at least contribute a certain percentage, or whatever percentage they'd like, into a private account, because that would ensure that when they retire, they'll get the money and that government doesn't misuse and mismanage those funds. Today, a worker earning $50,000 in income will receive a check for only 32% of their pre-retirement income. It's going to take about 20 years for someone to break even if they retire at 67. So you're going to be 87 years old plus before you get the money back that you've contributed into Social Security. We need reform. Thank you.
Mr. Ficker.
Well, I appreciate the fact that Social Security has been an ironclad promise made by the government to citizens who become needy in their later years. On the other hand, I think we need to give young people, like my children, the opportunity to invest the money as they would like, not in just interest-bearing accounts. For instance, if 10 years ago you had invested $1,000 in Apple, today you'd have $30,000. If you had invested it at the rate Social Security allows, you wouldn't even have $2,000. So there's a remarkable difference if you can find the right investments. And I understand there are unscrupulous security dealers that would try to get unsuspecting folks to contribute to accounts which do not have reliable investments. But we need to give people the opportunity at a young age to invest their money. Social Security is very important. I've completed 25,000 cases in Maryland courts, many people who are on Social Security, and they have a difficult time paying any of their bills, let alone the bills that they couldn't pay if they weren't getting Social Security. Let's support Social Security. My parents enjoyed it, and I will too one day.
You elect me your congressman, I won't lie to you, and I won't steal from you. All these other candidates are either outright lying or they're just ignorant of the facts. FICA is a tax. Go to court. You'll find out it's a tax. They told you it was a contribution, but you've been lied to. They've been telling you that they've been lying to you for 40 years now. And we sit back and say, well, geez, if maybe I don't do anything, I'll get lucky enough to get some of it out. But right now, the solution that everybody's talking about seems to be the favorite. Let the young people keep paying, and they don't get anything. And then the voters, 60% of everyone over 60 years old votes, 10% of everybody under 25 votes, so no one who's going to win that battle. In 35, they passed the Social Security Act. 37, it was going to the Supreme Court. It was going to be ruled unconstitutional. FDR threatened to pack the court. The court magically changed their mind and said the general welfare clause means Congress can do anything it damn well pleases. To me, that's a lie. And that's the basis of all our misery. We've got a Ponzi scheme. It's a true Ponzi scheme. And until we face up of it, it's like the elephant in the room. We've got to correct it, and I'll do that. Thank you.
Mr. Christoforski.
Social Security is important to retirees, all members of AARP, and also those in the 55 and over age group. One of the things we have to do is change the tax law. We really have to go to a flat tax. I agree with a flat tax, and reduce taxes on retirees' benefits. One of the other things we should do is take a look at plans that will open up more retirement savings accounts similar to IRAs, KEOGs, and Roth IRAs. Increase the percentage of money that we could contribute to our retirement accounts, whether they be 401ks or some other account, to a larger percentage of your base salary. As far as preserving Social Security or shoring up Social Security, we could bind increases in Social Security benefits to consumer price indexes rather than wages, and base benefits on means testing. All right, means testing of people above a certain salary level. Look at those levels and base Social Security benefits based on those means testings. Eliminate the ability of workers to receive benefits prior to retirement age, except under really extreme circumstances, and increase the early retirement age to 64 and the retirement age to 68. We do those things and we'll have more funds in Social Security. Now, for anybody under 50 and under, we have to move to a consumer-based, a consumer-driven system that they can take control of their own retirement funds and invest those funds the way they want to invest the funds. Thank you.
Mr. Ripien.
Thank you. What we're talking about here are entitlements. If we want to strengthen Social Security, we have to reform it. Right now, entitlements make up over 40% of our budget. We cannot balance the budget. We won't be able to reduce our debt unless we have real entitlement reform. And as a conservative, I do believe that we have to have entitlement reform. For our oldest working Americans, our retirees, I propose no change. For our individuals that are around perhaps the age 55, they are going to have to work longer. And I know that it might not be politically correct or easy to talk about, but they are going to have to work longer if we're going to maintain our programs. It takes leadership to say these things because they are unpopular sometimes. And for our youngest working Americans, I do believe that they should have the choice of whether or not to participate in these programs. We have an all-volunteer military in this country, but yet we have forced participation and conscription into these social welfare programs. And for our youngest working Americans, I do believe they should have the choice. The economy is made up of two parts, spending and consumption and savings and investment. And the reason why this recession has been so deep and so painful is because so much of the economy is based on spending and consumption. We need to put incentives in place to promote savings and investment so individuals can invest in themselves, invest in their future, and take care of themselves in the long run. Thank you.
Delegate Afzali.
Wow, it's a long time when you're the last one. Well, you've heard a lot of things that I agree with in terms of private investment accounts. We, of course, need to keep our promises to our retirees. My mother and father are both on Social Security, so certainly we don't want to eliminate Social Security, but we do need to start transitioning it into a separate investment accounts for the younger generation. But I will say something that kind of speaks beyond that, and that is my frustration. This is, I think, what, our 9th debate? Is it? I think our 9th or 8th debate. And I think something struck me while I was listening to everyone speak that I feel like I'm almost living in an alternate universe. This auditorium is largely empty. The issues that we are speaking to affect each and every life in this nation. And the person you elect is going to go to Congress and can send your sons and daughters and your grandchildren to war, and this auditorium is nearly empty. I'm sitting here with a man who's wearing pillows. I'm sitting here with people who have run grassroots campaigns and lost. A congressman who for 20 years has promised and spoken about these issues but has done nothing to repair it. A state senator who claims to be a minority leader who had to step down in disgrace 4 years ago. One point he forgot to mention. And I am fool to believe, and I do dare to believe, that this nation is worth saving. We cannot take another 4 years of Barack Obama or any years of the current congressman. You need someone who is a driver and not a passenger. Thank you.
Well, we had another question about Social Security, but talking about retirement savings got into that. We didn't talk, I think I mentioned rebuttal earlier. If you would like to rebut a statement that has been made, you can use some of your time for the next question. So we're going to move on to Medicare, and Senator Brinkley will be the first respondent on this one. How would you put Medicare on stronger financial ground and protect today's seniors and future retirees from the burden of rising health costs? Senator Brinkley.
Thank you. Well, the first thing that we have to do is we have to scrap Obamacare. I'm firmly of the opinion that that system alone is not something that we can continue to maintain, particularly when we learn that the latest costs on it are now doubled what's going to be affecting all of us. And when we look at Medicare and Medicaid, in my experience on the Budget and Tax Committee, you know, we certainly are trying to recognize the fact that that is contributing significantly to our health care costs. We have a couple things that need to be addressed by. We have to ensure portability. Certainly Medicaid and Medicare are portable once you qualify in those categories. But that's not the case with the private sector insurance. The other aspect that we have is we have litigation concern. We have so much medicine that's being practiced merely for defensive medicine. And that's not something that we certainly can be proud of. But we also have to keep in mind one other gem that we have. There's no other healthcare system in the world where people, particularly those of means in other countries, come to obtain treatment. We have been victims of our own success. I don't know that victimology is necessarily it. But at the same time, I'm a cancer survivor from many years ago. I'm a beneficiary of everything that we have going on. And to help subscribe and maintain our Medicare, Medicaid system, I do firmly believe in state block grants so that the states themselves can determine what their populations necessarily need. I do not believe that one size fits all determined by Washington. Thank you very much.
Mr. Koblenz.
To save Medicare, I think that we need to work in a private free market industry environment. I think the federal government can help work with the states, but I think if we get private industry in there, it would hold our elected officials accountable and making sure that every taxpayer dollar is accounted for and utilized as most efficiently as possible. Medicare is known to become insolvent by the year 2020. That's right around the corner. Obamacare rips $500 billion from Medicare. Senator Brinkley mentioned we need to repeal Obamacare or at least defund it as much as possible. Nearly 1/4 of all seniors rely on Medicare Advantage, okay? But nearly half of those that rely on that program are going to lose their coverage. Obamacare is unconstitutional, it's unsustainable, it's unworkable, and it's unprecedented in the way that it's the federal mandate and the overreaching federal power. It's consuming our nation. It's literally ripping the Constitution away from everyone, and it's the crowbar to mandate the car you drive, the light bulb you use, or the food you eat. It's time that American people stand up and stand on principle. Thank you.
Mr. Ficker?
We need to cut the cost of Medicare. There's no question about it, but the president seems to be shying away from doing that. Indeed, all politicians in an election year seem to be shying away from that unless they have a really safe seat and no opponent. It's true that the cost of health care has risen at least 28% overall since Mr. Obama took office, and he was the one touting Obamacare as the solution to this cost increase problem. We're going to have to look at it in committee, on the floor, and propose small cuts along the way because we can't keep going the way where we're going. Kathy says that she's the one that needs to be in Congress to make us safe. I'm the only one up here that has an honorable discharge from the U.S. Army. I'm the only one up here that had a father-in-law who was a lieutenant general in charge of the U.S. Army. It's easy to talk tough, but you have to temper that talk with the knowledge that war is hell. I've been to the funeral of a classmate at West Point who was a Rhodes Scholar, another who was an Olympic athlete, another who was on my mile relay team. You have to understand that talking tough is not the answer. You also have to be wise. And Iran is a big problem. We're going to be talking about it later.
Mr. James.
Great, my turn. I had a brainstorm last night. I figured rather than fight this constitutionality thing, I'd double down with the healthcare thing, and a big thing is cost. So anybody over 65 is going to be mandated to wear these or receive a $1,000 fine. And most of the injuries occur in the home, so everybody, we're going to come through your homes and make sure you got your helmet on. And actually this has the extra benefit of keeping the cell phone from giving you brain cancer. So we're going to make sure that the government takes care of everyone. But being real, here's a list in my brochure of all the enumerated powers that we have in the Constitution. Maryland, I believe, is the only state that has a Medicare waiver. Dave can probably tell you. This is something that it should be done at the state level. And they're much more prudent. But the biggest thing, if you go back and read Exodus about Joseph and how the Pharaoh got all those slaves, basically there was two famines. The first famine, that they came and gave the Pharaoh all their cattle. The second famine, they came and they said, please make us your slaves. And here's all our land. Well, what we have is we have a bunch of these Wall Street and foreign bankers that have collapsed this money system time and time again, creating these economic famines. And instead of, God made the earth prosperous. You plant one kernel of corn and you get 1,000 come up. And it's only these economic famines that have caused us to look to the government for all our necessities. Thank you.
Mr. Kristoforski, I do want to remind you that the question was about Medicare, but I'm glad we got the pillows answered.
I'm glad you reminded me because I lost track of it as it came down this way. Repealing Obamacare will go a long way to helping preserve Medicare, but we have to look beyond that. Healthcare accounts for 1/6 of our economy, and the largest portion of payments of healthcare go to our seniors and our retirees. I agree with David that Medicare should be restructured from an open-end program to a block grant program and let the states distribute it. Medicare should also be shifted to a means-based system for high-income retirees. We could increase deductibles for services and premiums for Part B to increase coverage of the program's cost and make it more consumer involvement in the whole Medicare process. Part D, which is the prescription drug program, needs total reworking. To say that the Healthcare Finance Administration cannot negotiate for drugs is ludicrous. The largest block of prescription drugs are going to be going to our aging population, and they cannot negotiate for those drug prices. So most of the time you're paying manufacturers' suggested retail prices for your prescription drugs. Change Medicare to a consumer-driven system will save an estimated $200 billion per year based on current healthcare estimates. And shift to a consumer-based system for people that are over the age of 50, under the age of 50, more involvement in their healthcare and savings for future healthcare benefits, and more involvement there. Thank you.
Mr. Ripien.
Thank you. If we want to reduce healthcare costs, we have to reduce transaction costs. As a businessman, I understand this. Of course, we have to repeal Obamacare. We need tort reform. We have to get away from practicing defensive medicine. The key is to introduce free market principles into our healthcare system. Free market principles, competition does two things. It ensures that a product or service is offered to the consumer at the lowest possible price and at the highest level of quality. That's how you get transaction costs down, and with lower transaction costs, you have lower healthcare costs. That's the solution. Thank you.
Delegate Afzali.
Thank you. I too am for the repeal of Obamacare. I'm actually surprised that the AARP has endorsed Obamacare when the members of AARP are the ones who have the most to lose by Obamacare. It mostly compromises those who are 65 and older. So it's a terrible program. I hope that the next president, God willing it's a Republican, is able to repeal Obamacare, and I hope that if I'm in the Congress, if I'm your congresswoman, that I will be able to help the next president do that. But in terms of health care, what are the things we need to do? First of all, we want to keep it privately run. Government does not do this well. I had an opportunity this past summer to spend some time up in Canada and witness firsthand how bad their healthcare system is. You can't get a doctor in Canada unless you go to the emergency room. If you've got strep throat, you have to go to the emergency room because you cannot get a doctor unless you've had that doctor for the last 20 years. Government-run healthcare is never the solution. Privately run healthcare works. We need to address tort reform. That's a huge issue. It's been a huge issue here in Maryland, directly affecting whether or not we can get doctors to come here. It's also an issue nationwide. We also have to promote cross-state line bidding for healthcare. And the Obamacare will cost us in the trillions of dollars. I'm for repealing Obamacare. Thank you.
Congressman.
You know, when you mention the federal government giving block grants back to the states, what you're really saying is that the federal government never should have taken that money in the first place. Since we've taken it, I want to give it back this year, but next year I'd certainly like to not collect those taxes. Because if we give it back, we support a huge bureaucracy in Washington that soaks up a lot of that money before we can give it back to the states. We just don't need to be involved at all if block grants are the answer. In Congress, in the House, we're dismantling Obamacare one brick at a time. We've now passed 16 bills to do that. The last one was just before I left, where we repealed IPAP and did some meaningful reforms to tort reform. To preserve Medicare, we've clearly got to reduce the cost. We've got to reduce the cost of health care across the board. And you cannot reduce the cost of health care by refusing to pay the cost of health care, which is what the federal government does. They're proposing to take a number of billions of dollars out of Medicare for the future. It's already in trouble. It's going to be in trouble even quicker if you do that. Two quick things that we can do to reduce the cost of health care. Maybe 25% of the cost of health care is an administrative cost. And we can reduce that. If you own the policy yourself, then you have portability, and not very many people have a pre-existing condition at 18 years of age. You're going to now, if it's a health savings kind of account, you're now going to ask questions. How much does it cost? Do I really need that? If it's yours, it rolls over, you're going to practice preventive medicine, we can do really meaningful tort reform. I may have our opportunity to address that in a subsequent question. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to switch here a little bit, starting with Mr. Koblenz. It's a question about jobs and the economy. Millions of Americans have lost their jobs. How would you help Americans, especially those age 50 and over, get back to work and improve the economy for all Americans?
First thing we have to do is reduce regulation. Of the 227,000 jobs that were created in February, 31,000 were in manufacturing. How many jobs were created in construction? Zero. Zero jobs in construction. Government needs to be a partner and not an adversary. We need to reduce regulation and create a climate where businesses, entrepreneurs can feel comfortable and confident investing in new and existing businesses. This will allow those that currently have a job to feel comfortable and confident that they will not lose their job. May promote more retirement savings because they're not scaling that back, trying to put more money in an actual just a savings account or checking account in case they do lose their job. And it'll also allow our unemployed, which is currently 8.5%, give or take a percentage, tenth of a percent, to feel comfortable looking for a job. You know, our real unemployment rate is much more higher than what what's reported to you today through the filtered media. So we need to encourage businesses to feel comfortable, feel confident, have government scale back their regulation, and work directly with businesses so they can promote and grow their business. That will create jobs. That will also increase the revenue stream that we have. 99-week unemployment, how much money is the government spending for that? Let's get those people back to work, stop allocating funds for that, and we start receiving additional tax revenue because people are working again.
Mr. Ficker, jobs and the economy.
Well, I'm not running for Congress. I'm running for Congress and jobs because it's the #1 issue in our district. There are a lot of people, especially in the western half of our district, who are looking for jobs and have been desperately looking for jobs for a very long time. I point again to Apple. You all are familiar with the company. You have an iPod, you have an iPad. It's the largest U.S. company. The stock is up 45% since January 1st. Where are their jobs? 500,000 in China and Japan, 10,000 in the United States. And I think to myself, why aren't those jobs in Hagerstown, Frederick, Germantown, Cumberland, Oakland? Why aren't they here? It's because people work less expensively in China and Japan, perhaps, but also because we aren't giving Apple the jawboning that we need to. We aren't giving them the tax incentives to locate those jobs here. And I don't want it to seem as though I'm picking on just one company, but that's a shining example. I'm a stockholder. I read their annual reports. I'm familiar with the company. We have to light a candle somewhere. If we could convince that one company, our largest American company, to bring jobs here, perhaps other companies would bring jobs here as well.
Mr. James.
You're going to hear every single candidate across the nation tell you they're going to go to Washington and create jobs. That's nonsense. First of all, there's nothing in my Constitution that says they have any authority to create jobs. What they do have the authority and the duty to do is create money, and they've given that away to the private banking system called the Federal Reserve. Now, the reason we lost jobs is because the banks stopped lending. They basically crashed the money supply. You cannot have new jobs unless there's more circulating money in existence that actually exists to put into the paycheck every 2 weeks. It just won't happen. And to think that all these things are going to create jobs unless that M1 money supply increases by 10% to give 10% more jobs, it's just not going to happen. So I spent 35 years studying monetary systems, ours and throughout history, and I understand it. The reason I'm running again this time is because they're going to collapse the system right after the election. That's what they did 2008, 2009. Everybody looked at me like I was Chicken Little and had 3 heads. And they said, no, this couldn't possibly happen. Well, it did happen, and I'm guaranteeing you it's going to happen again. We had $1.5 quadrillion worth of derivatives that exploded. We now have over $2 quadrillion of these derivatives that are ready to implode. So please go to Peter James 2012 and watch that Money is Debt video. Thanks.
Mr. Christoforski.
Government does not create jobs. People create jobs. People need predictability to create jobs. Small businesses need predictability. Small businesses are the backbone of the economy. They are the ones that create the majority of the jobs. They're the ones who create. They're the ones that most of the people in this room will work for or have worked for. We need to reduce the corporate tax rate. The United States is ranked 13 in ease of starting a business. We should be ranked number 1. We shouldn't be ranked number 13. We have to move to a flat tax rate so that everybody pays a similar type of tax. But the biggest thing is regulation. We have over-regulated businesses to the point where it is too expensive for businesses to stay in this country. The Dodd-Frank bill that was passed 2 years ago will end up creating more bureaucracy in Washington than any other laws that have been passed in the last 15 years. They'll create agency after agency after agency, and they'll keep growing and keep regulating, and the more regulation that hits the economy, that hits the businesses, the less jobs there are going to be available, because people will not start companies. They will not expand. Companies won't expand. They will not go out and hire employees if they don't know when the next shoe is going to drop. We need stability. We need predictability. Small businesses, medium-sized businesses, the backbone of the economy, that's what they need to grow, and that's what we have to move towards. And the way we do that is by bringing down regulation. The way we do that is not by stimulating the economy, but emancipating the economy and letting the economy grow. Thank you.
Mr. Ripien.
Thank you. When it comes to jobs, the only jobs the government creates are more government jobs. We don't need more government jobs. We need private sector jobs. We need private sector investment, private sector development, private sector enterprise. Look, 2 fundamental principles of economics. People respond to incentives, and rational people make decisions at the margins. With those things in mind, there is no reason, there is no incentive to do business here in America. We have the 2nd highest corporate tax rate of any industrialized nation in the world. We have incredible regulation, incredible bureaucratic red tape. We have unelected, unappointed czars running around imposing their will on businesses. We have to roll these things back. We have to cut the regulation. We have to simplify the tax code. When it comes to training, science, technology, engineering, mathematics, that is the future. That's where the future job growth is going to come from. That's where the training should rest. Immigration is also an issue with jobs. Illegal aliens have destroyed our labor markets in this country. It is almost impossible to earn a living in America today as a carpenter, as a mason, as a painter, as a roofer. These are honorable, working middle-class jobs which for years have provided for a family, provided for home ownership, allowed people to go to college. Immigration also plays a very big role in turning this economy around. Thank you.
Gallagher.
Yes, I ditto what Mr. Ripien said, and also want to add that it's about confidence right now. Until we get a new president, there's just not going to be confidence in this economy. We have corporations and businesses in this nation sitting on hundreds of billions of dollars of cash, waiting to invest, waiting to grow their businesses. But why aren't they doing it? They're doing it because of uncertainty. They don't know what regulations are coming. They don't know how this health care is going to play out. They know that the Obamacare is already costing their business money. So they're hanging on to this money because they're not sure. They're not sure what to do. The best thing for government to do is get the heck out of the way. Stop with the regulations. We have regulation upon regulation, And like Mr. Rippian said, we have the highest, the second highest corporate tax rate. Let's lower our corporate tax rate to 12 or 13% and give those companies the incentives to stop incorporating overseas and come back here and pay whatever taxes they're going to pay here, and stop paying hundreds of millions of dollars to accountants to avoid American tax. If we just simplify the tax code, we'd start making more money. It's so important to this great nation also that we focus on the real estate market right now. And the real estate market is not going to transition until we get a president in the White House and a new Congress, someone to support that president, that's going to help transition this into a new, innovative, and exciting economy.
Mr. Bartlett.
Several years ago, the Congress grappled with corporate inversions. A corporate inversion is when they incorporate offshore. And they do this because of our tax laws and our regulations. The question Congress asked was, how can we punish them for corporate inversions? Of course, the right question to ask was, why did they have to do the corporate inversion? Many of the officers of these companies had young people, kids who were bleeding and dying in Afghanistan and Iraq. Why would they want to incorporate offshore? Apple's been mentioned. They have about, I think, about $100 billion now. Most of that is trapped overseas. I think $80 billion trapped overseas. They can't bring it back here because of our tax laws and our regulations. If you think about taxing corporations, you really don't tax corporations. They don't pay taxes. They collect taxes. It's a part of the cost of doing business. If they can't pass that on to the consumer, they won't be in business. I'd like to reduce corporate taxes to zero. Don't worry about losing revenues, because the increased jobs that come to this country because companies would flock here, the employees that work there, their taxes will far offset the tax loss from the corporation. We need to reduce regulations. We have the most onerous regulations of about any country around the globe. You know, they're all based on the premise that every manufacturer, every provider is evil and greedy and going to screw the consumer. That just isn't true. I've been there. We need to reduce taxes, we need to reduce regulations, and businesses will come to this country, and we will have jobs.
Mr. Brinkley.
Thank you. First, when you're last, a lot of the key issues have been addressed, and particularly Joe, when he touched on the concept of the corporate tax and regulations at first. The thing I want to point out to you, there's an organization known as Maryland Business for Responsive Government, mbrg.org. And when you look at those three of us here that have a voting record and currently serve, you can look up our voting record and how we've been on jobs and business in that type of venue. So I encourage you to go look that up. I have one of the highest rankings in the state Senate over my career for job creation. But the second thing I want to touch on is I mentioned that three of us are currently serving. And when you serve, you have the distinct duty, you have an honor, but you have the distinct duty to show up and represent your people. The Congressman and I hold that to very high regard, to all extent that when we have a voting opportunity, we are to show up and be there. Kathy, you can criticize President Obama all you want. At least he voted present. He showed up. Yesterday you missed 125 votes. Thursday night you missed all the key votes on the budget, the tax increases, and everything of concern to people for what's going on in Annapolis. You let us down, you let me down, because you're one of my delegates. And, you know, I would encourage you, when you get the chance, explain to people why you're choosing to go on the campaign trail and abdicating your obligation and responsibility to your constituents. Thank you.
Okay, I want to remind the candidates, if you want to rebut, you can use your next response time. We're going to switch to foreign policy, and we're going to go to former delegate Robin Ficker. Robin Ficker and I were in Annapolis in the early 1980s, and we were younger then, I think, Robin. What should Congress do about Afghanistan and Iran?
Afghanistan, out of Afghanistan. That's what we should do. Bring them home tomorrow. Osama bin Laden is dead. Bring them home. As for Iran, that's very, very worrisome to me because it's 5 times the size of Iraq, has 3 times as many people as Iraq. The nuclear development sites are buried very deep beneath impenetrable concrete. And I'm afraid we're headed, it looks like, from the talk, and that's what it always starts as, is talk, then deeds. We're headed into going in there. Not if I'm in Congress, not unless that vote goes to the Congress. We're not going to let the president get us in there with drones or no-fly zones, any of that. I know that war is hell. I've seen it with my classmates at the United States Military Academy, and this is a very serious issue. It will drive the cost of gasoline up to $10 a gallon. You won't be able to go to work very easily. I'm dismayed to hear the bickering between the legislators from Frederick. I think they should talk those issues in the state senate race in Frederick 2 years from now, or when they're running in the 8th district 2 years from now. That's where they live.
Mr. James.
No undeclared war. Congress cannot delegate that power to anyone. He can't delegate any of these other powers. No war on isms. You go to war against a country, and only if attacked. We also have to look at some of the motivation. War produces a lot of debt. Entitlements produce a lot of debt. We can't afford to pay our way, so these are reasons to get us involved. If you look at, we funded the Mujahideen. We knew exactly who these people were. There's something called letters of marque and reprisal. But the thing is when the Taliban, basically the Mujahideen, when they took power, we sat down at the table and said, let's get that pipeline built. And of course, they wanted a little bit more for their country, and we said, well, we want it all. And I believe that was an impetus. Now we're looking at Iran. Iran's talking to China and Russia about denominating their oil in something other than the U.S. dollar. That's a no-no. That's why we're seeing the sanctions on their central bank. Same thing in Libya. So you've got to look, I think, a lot deeper than just, the reasons of war that, we've got, I'm half Greek. I haven't worried about Iran invading since the 3000 BC when Xerxes came over to Greece. So, this politics of fear and greed is something that I'm not going to be a party to. Thank you.
Mr. Christoforski.
We have to draw down our troops in Afghanistan. We have to bring our troops home. I agree with Rob, and I think everybody on this table would agree with that. We've done all that we can in Afghanistan. But when we do that drawdown, we have to be a cautious drawdown, and we have to make sure that the servicemen and women who are remaining there are protected as that drawdown occurs. As far as Iran goes, Iran is the prevalent threat in the Middle East. They're a threat to security of the Middle East. They're a threat to Israel, who is our strongest ally in the Middle East. We have to remain strong, and we can't let our guard down. We have to we continue with the economic sanctions. We continue with the diplomatic sanctions. They're working. Right? They're starting to work a little bit there. But we can't stand idly by and let Iran develop a nuclear weapon. We have to take we have to be strong, and we have to support and take whatever actions necessary when that comes. But only on credible intelligence, credible and verifiable intelligence. I'm a strong believer that we went into Iraq without credible and verifiable intelligence. We went in there for one reason only, and that's because the president at the time wanted to take out the leader of the country. We have to remain strong. The United States has to remain strong. But when necessary, we have to be prepared to defend our country and defend our allies. The War Powers Act, I think, is unconstitutional. The president doesn't have the authority to go in and declare war. Only Congress has that authority, and before he takes any action, he has to come to Congress and request that action. Thank you.
Mr. Rippian.
Thank you. I believe we have accomplished our original mission in Afghanistan. Al-Qaeda has been routed. If you speak to any expert, they will tell you that there are fewer than 50 foreign fighters left in that country. Bin Laden is dead. I do not support this concept of nation building. I do not support the billions and billions of dollars we are pouring into that country in foreign aid. I believe it is time to bring our soldiers home with the honor and dignity that they deserve. Look, when it comes to this war on terror, we're funding both sides of it. We spend all of this money on national defense, and at the same time, because Brent crude is at $125 a barrel, West Texas Intermediate is at $105 a barrel, we give our enemies all the sources of funding and revenue they need to attack us. This is where Iran is getting their money to fund their nuclear weapons programs, from the price of petroleum. Petroleum is a commodity, and a fundamental principle of economics tells us that if you want to reduce the price of a commodity, you have to increase the supply. We should ramp up domestic petroleum production, natural gas production in this country, bring the price of petroleum down, and that will cut off the sources of funding for all of these terrorist nations around the world. That is how you win the war on terror. Look, when it comes to Iran's nuclear weapons programs, where did they get the start to be in the nuclear weapons business? It came from the United States, from Dwight Eisenhower's Atoms for Peace program. We need to take a much longer view of foreign policy. So many of these issues are self-inflicted wounds. We need to look out farther. We can't have such a myopic view of foreign policy. We always need to look down the road. Thank you.
Delegate Afsali.
Did you ask about Iran or only Afghanistan?
No, I asked about both.
You asked about
Afghanistan
both.
and
Just
Iran.
wanted to make sure I understood the question. Yes, of course, we want to bring our troops home as quickly as possible, but this does go to a broader issue about why we keep getting into these entanglements in the Middle East. We get into these entanglements because of oil, because of energy. We have right now enough energy in our own borders to fuel this great nation. We have gas right here in Maryland. We have oil in Anwar. We do need to increase the supply and increase our own supply. Our current congressman has multiple times voted against drilling in our country. This has put us at jeopardy and will continue to get us into quagmires with Middle Eastern thugs. We need to bring our troops home, yes, and we need to protect Israel, yes, our only ally there and the only democratically elected government there. But until we are energy independent, we will always be in fisticuffs with these Middle Eastern countries. So we want to make sure we drill here. We want to make sure that we have local and United States sources of energy. We want the Keystone Pipeline. We want certainly to do that. Just voting for it in this last week doesn't neglect or doesn't excuse the fact that the congressman has voted against it repeatedly for the last 20 years.
Congressman Bartlett.
I advocated that if we were going to drill in Anwar, that we should have an appropriate investment in alternatives. Don Young, who represents Alaska, agreed with me on that and supported my bill. Actually, he was the primary sponsor of that bill. I have not consistently voted against drilling. As a matter of fact, I just voted for H.R. 3408, a true all-of-the-above bipartisan bill that would promote drilling in Anwar and offshore. The question was about Afghanistan. I've asked the question, and it's on the congressional record. You can go look it up. Why isn't Afghanistan the ultimate exercise in futility? Even if we're able to do what no one else has ever done in Afghanistan, from Alexander the Great, the British Empire, the Soviet Empire, and we might, we are really good. But it won't make any difference because the bad guys will simply go into Pakistan. And if we spend, I don't know how many more dead kids and kids with their arms and legs blown off and billions of dollars and drive them out of Pakistan, they'll go to Yemen and Somalia. I have no idea why we're in Afghanistan. It is, I think, the ultimate exercise in futility. We need to exit gracefully. I'm not sure how one does that, but we need to get out as quickly as we can, as gracefully as we can. We shouldn't have been there. Going in originally was okay. We joined sides in a civil war, the right side. They won quickly. Then we should have left. Thank you.
Senator Brinkley.
Thank you. You know, when we take a look at what the obligation of the federal government is, and there can be lots of disputes about where we should be in different policies, but it's undisputed that its primary purpose is to protect us at our shores. And to that extent, when we look at a 9/11 event, it was called a black swan event also, where we never could anticipate something like that, but then in retrospect, we certainly can dissect it and see how it happened. Our security interests across the world is to the end, as far as I'm concerned, that we make sure that we are safe here at home. We can have our disagreements and our disputes all that we want, but we have to have the right that we know that we can say what we need to say in a safe environment to do so. That's not the case through the rest of the world, and to that end, I believe that we do need to have the opportunity and the obligation to do some type of surgical work, if that's what it takes, to protect ourselves. Energy policy certainly is very key, but I'm also mindful, and you know, I've criticized Robin an awful lot in some of our debates, but the one time when he talks about his classmates from the military academy and hearing the pain of losing some of his friends, it's heartfelt. I've heard it. I know that I've met with the families of everybody in my district who's lost somebody overseas, and we have an obligation to be mindful of the families and the lives at risk when it comes to protecting our security interests and protecting our economic interests. You know, and especially if I end up in Congress, that has to be front and foremost in every decision that's made. Thank you.
Mr. Koblenz.
Thank you. And in regards to Afghanistan, yes, I do believe as well to bring our troops home. Right now we're targeted to get out of Afghanistan by the year of 2014. This is because of nation building. We're actively training their security forces. I think it's time to come home as soon as possible. In regards to Iran, I think we should continue with the sanctions. I believe they're working. We need to continue to tighten them and make it really pain-felt, especially from the economic perspective. I do believe in preemptive strikes. I believe our country has the right to protect its people. And anytime, especially a country that Iran with the extreme dictatorship that they have, they need to be taken very seriously. Iran stated they want to blow Israel off the face of the map, okay? We need to protect Israel. We need to secure the Middle East as much as possible, but we cannot be the world's policeman at the same time. In regards to energy independence, this is a clear indication. If you think $4 and $5 gallon of gas is bad today, if Iran has a nuclear weapon, the speculators will drive up the cost of oil and decimate our economy. I think we need to have a clear domestic energy policy. I think we should unleash the Marcellus Shale, 262 trillion tons of natural gas, the largest natural reserve in Northern America in our country, and the Keystone Pipeline, 850,000 barrels of oil per day, 20,000 jobs, private funded, not taxpayer. Thank you.
Okay, well, we actually segued into the next issue, and I have a question from the audience, which I'm going to combine with my own question about energy, and we're going to start with Mr. Wait a minute. No. We switched.
Mr. Ficker.
We started with.
Robin went first last time.
Right. Okay. I eliminated one question, so my own order up here is getting a little confused. But in any case, it's about energy. Gasoline prices are now over $4 a gallon. What should Congress be doing about federal energy policy? And from the audience, they raised an issue that already came up in the last questioning about drilling on federal lands and offshore drilling. So, Mr. James, do you have a constitutional question about this?
Yeah. Well, certainly within the state, there's no constitutional issue, but if it is on federal lands and offshore within the 12-mile limit, Congress does have a duty to regulate that. And what I would try to look at the science of it. in that decision. But other than that, I would limit the Department of Energy to just those jurisdictions. But really, when you're looking at oil, the price of gasoline, everybody's saying it's going up. This is a silver dollar, an ounce of silver. This would buy 4.8 gallons of gas in 1970 before the embargo. This buys 7.8 gallons of gas today. Now, either there's a silver crisis, or you know, I think everybody's looking at the whole monetary thing the money thing upside down. Actually, the price of oil, compared to other commodities, has come down. And we are, you know, there's a debate over whether or not places in Dakota there's accessible and there's a technology to get the oil out. But there's a lot of other technologies that can be looked at, and I'm actually got a renewable farm up there, but I don't want the government in there, because actually the government subsidies, like the USDA, there's nothing that's applicable for local energy production. So the government does a very poor job of those sort of things.
Mr. Christoforski.
The United States is the third largest producer of oil in the world. Right. We're sitting on 2 trillion barrels of oil in the United States. Peter had mentioned North Dakota. North Dakota reopened up its oil fields. They're generating today 418,000 barrels of oil a day, and it's estimated that they're sitting on another 30 million barrels underground, and that's been a conservative estimate. The estimate is under Montana an additional 30 billion barrels of oil. We do need an alternative energy program. Right? We do need to move off of fossil fuels at some point in time. Right? But this is not the time. That technology is not ready yet. Fossil fuels will be with us for a while, and the way that we have to answer that is to take advantage of our domestic oil supplies. Oil production in the United States has actually increased over the last couple of years. You'll hear people talk about peak oil, that we've peaked, right? But we've actually increased our production of oil. And we don't get that much of our oil from the Middle East. The largest portion of the oil that we import comes from Venezuela and comes from Canada. The Marcellus Shale for gas, opening the Marcellus Shale for gas exploration, that'll bring jobs to Western Maryland, and that'll bring jobs and improve the economy of the entire Western Maryland district, but also Maryland as a whole. It'll help, not just Western Maryland. We have to look at energy from a different perspective. We have to invest and diversify our energy sources over a period of time when the consumers start to accept that technology. Thank you.
Mr. Rip.
Thank you. Energy issues are a national security issue, which I've talked about earlier, and it's also an issue for our economy. By increasing North American petroleum and natural gas, it is a source of great number of private sector jobs, private sector investment, and private sector enterprise. The average job in the petroleum industry is $68,000 a year. These are great middle-class jobs. I do not support using taxpayer dollars and subsidies to fund an artificial green economy. It has been tried before. It is called Spain. It does not work. It is a complete failure. Many of these alternative energy sources, ethanol, solar, have all been around since the late 60s and 70s. They didn't work then. They don't work today, and I do not support pouring more and more taxpayer dollars into these programs. Look, a lot of people talk about the wind farms, the turbines, and electric cars. Well, where do the rare earth metals that you need to make both those things come from? There's 2 of them, and they both come from China. So now we're going to talk about replacing OPEC and doing business with OPEC to depending on the authoritarian Chinese government to do business with. We are trading one devil for the other. The only way to fix this problem, national security and our economy, is to use the resources inside our own borders. We have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years of resources that we can use here. I support increasing natural gas production and increasing petroleum production here in the United States, drilling in Anwar, drilling in the Gulf and in deep water. Thank you.
Well, we did cover this before, but I would also like to add that these alternative sources of energy, these renewable resources, really have not been productive thus far. We've had wind farms throughout this country. They have wind farms in Europe. They had brownouts also this past summer in Europe from wind energy when there was no wind. They also kill bats and migratory birds. So wind farms are not the answer. You have photovoltaic cells, which is for solar. These do not produce enough energy to produce, even for your home. I priced voltaic cells for my own home. It was going to cost $100,000 to get my house off of the grid. It just does not pay for itself. I figured it was going to take me about 35 years to pay for it through my cost savings. The elephant in the room is nuclear. Nuclear energy is clean and it's safe. It takes a lot of bad rap, but it's been working well throughout the world. France has built nuclear power plants. They are working terrifically. We really need one more in the state of Maryland. We do not want to get in the way of nuclear energy. It is important for our future. Again, we do want to drill. We want to make certain that we tap into those sources. The states that are tapping into their natural resources and doing it in a clean, environmentally safe way are booming. North Dakota has $1 billion surplus. While Maryland is borrowing $1.5 billion to balance the budget, those states are booming. So, all of the above.
Congress.
When you talk about drilling on federal lands, I need to ask, why do we have so many federal lands? I understand our parks and so forth, but the federal government owns 90% of Nevada. I don't think the federal government does as good a job of managing lands as the private sector. We owe $15 trillion in debt. Why don't we sell a lot of this federal land so we're talking about drilling on private lands rather than federal lands? The United States has 2% of the known reserves of oil in the world today. This year we're going to produce more oil than last year. That's the first time, by the way, since 1970 that we've produced more oil than the year before. We now produce half the oil that we did in 1970. We're getting this oil from the Bakken oil. It has 4 billion barrels of oil, a little less than 4 billion barrels of oil there. That will last the world about 45 days. The world has been stuck at 84 million barrels of oil a day now for 5 years. That hasn't budged. That's why oil is $100 a barrel. The most traded oil, Brent, is $125 a barrel. This hasn't budged for 5 years. I'm not sure it's going to budge. We need to have, I'm in favor of drilling anywhere and everywhere. That just needs to be done with a recognition that oil is finite. It will not last forever. We need to be planning a transition from oil. One day it will be gone. That's a couple hundred years from now, but it's one day it will be gone. We need to be planning that transition now. Thank you.
Senator Brinkley.
Thank you. I think a lot of what has been said is either patently obvious or it's exactly where we're headed with Marcellus Shale, some of the opportunities we have domestically. And part of the reason that I see is that I would rather have production, transportation, and then processing done under our set of guidelines. And by that I mean our environmental rules. Now, it's not to say that they're pristine. In fact, if anything, they can be very, very hazardous. Well, I guess not hazardous isn't the correct way, but crippling from someone who really wants to get things moving. But I would much rather have them under our auspices than the Chinese or the Cubans or the Russians or anybody else who stands to drill offshore, or were the Keystone Pipeline to be directed to Vancouver, so then it could be unloaded to ships and then sent to China. I'd rather have that come down to Texas and have us do some production there. But I want to shift a little bit because energy is so important when it comes to transportation. And transportation down here in Montgomery County, transportation in western Maryland, Allegheny, Garrett, Washington, and Frederick County is so key to our economic viability. I hope you enjoy the ICC. I'm the only person here that was able to vote for the ICC, and frankly, I've taken a lot of heat for it back home because we have transportation issues that are across the board very important to us. And I oppose the imposition of an increase in the gas tax. Why? Because that revenue is not generated back or brought back to the commuters and to the individuals that generate that money by paying for it in that regard. So, thank you.
Mr. Koblenz.
Thank you. I'm definitely for opening up federal lands and drilling offshore. I like to see the moratorium in the Gulf Coast lifted so we can access that. You see China drilling off the coast of Cuba. I think we also need to reduce regulations, get the Economic Prevention Agency, the EPA, or excuse me, Environmental Protection Agency out of the way. I think that's their regulations are working outside of the legislative process, and Congress should be in charge of creating those rules and creating a climate to promote a safe, clean air, clean water, sure, but we're experiencing paralysis by analysis right now. By the Marcellus Shale, the governor, that study won't be completed until 2014, by the time he's out of office, and who knows what the next step is after that. So we're at least 2 years away from even thinking about trying to access a natural gas, an abundance of natural gas from that area. Allegheny County is, I hate to say it's a depressed county when you look at the district. It's a drive-through county. I mean, you have Washington County. It's a great county. Then you drive through and you get to Garrett County for Wisp and Deep Creek Lake. I mean, that would be a game changer for those people that live out there. It would create such an economic resurgence, or almost a renaissance, from their days from the C&O Canal. So I do promote, would like to work with the President and other Congress men and women to open up federal lands in a safe and strategic manner.
Mr. Ficker.
I disagree with the plan of the Democrats in Maryland and the Washington Post to discourage driving by raising the gasoline taxes, and I've led that fight against the increased gasoline tax. My son is getting a degree in petroleum engineering from the University of West Virginia in May. We need to open up the Marcellus Shale in Garrett County and Allegheny County, not wait 3 years. Politics is local. As your local congressman, that's what I'm for. Opening up that great resource so we can get the natural gas, take all the 18-wheelers that are interfering with your traffic off the road, put them on natural gas, and if they're going to travel on the road, they're going to be saving us pollution, they're going to be saving us energy by using that natural gas. We're not going to have closing statements, as I understand it. Is that correct?
That is correct.
I want to make a little pitch here. You don't go to Frederick to shop at the Walmart there. You shop at the Walmart in Germantown. You bank here in Montgomery County. You send your children to school here in Montgomery County. Why should you have an absentee congressman? We've had 2 U.S. senators from Baltimore since 1986. How has that worked for you? We need to have a Montgomery County congressman. You all know me, and let's keep it here. We have the majority of the votes in this district.
Okay, we only have 2 questions left, as Mr. Ficker pointed out, we're not having closing statements, so if you want to add, this is not the last question, but it's from the audience combined with my question about immigration. And we're going to start with Mr. Christoforski. There are an estimated 12 million people in this country illegally. What should Congress do about illegal immigrants? And since it's going to be on the ballot in the fall, where you hope to be, do you support giving illegal aliens in-state college tuition?
Well, let's start from the top. I'll answer the question about in-state tuition. Absolutely not. When I was campaigning in the fall, I was out there with a petition. Everywhere I went, I had people sign the petition to bring it to referendum. Immigration is a national security issue. First and foremost, what we have to secure our borders. If we don't secure our borders, everything else we do is useless. Immigration services have to cooperate with border states, Arizona, Mexico, the states along the northern border also, to make sure that our borders are verifiably secure. We have to fully fund E-Verify so we're not hiring illegal aliens. And employers that are hiring illegal aliens need to be penalized. We have to fully enforce the Immigration Act. One of the things we do not enforce our immigration laws. We haven't enforced our immigration laws since amnesty was granted in '86, and we continue not to enforce our immigration laws. No new paths to citizenship. Paths to citizenships already exist today. Withhold funding from states, from sanctuary states. There are a number of states that are sanctuary states. We withhold funding from those states. Illegal aliens will not go to the states. For jobs in this country, reduce the number of H-1B and H-2B visas. Right? Reserve birthright citizenship to U.S. citizens, to children born of U.S. citizens and born of resident aliens, legal people who are here legally, and empower the states through 287G programs, allowing law enforcement agencies to enter into agreements with ICE. And last but not least, sour the milk. They're not going to come here. They're coming here for jobs.
Mr. Rippian.
Thank you. No DREAM Act. I do not support the DREAM Act. I do not believe children born in this country to the parents of illegal aliens deserve automatic birthright citizenship. I support English as the national language. We need to secure our southern border with a fence. And when it comes to illegal aliens, I support a policy called deportation through attrition. If there are no jobs for illegal aliens, no privileges for illegal aliens like driver's license, like bank accounts, if there are no benefits for illegal aliens like free and reduced meals in school and subsidized housing, they will return to their own country on their own accord, and they can apply to come here legally. No amnesty for illegal aliens and no DREAM Act. Thank you.
Well, I take particular interest in this topic because I was one of the spearheaders of the petition drive. I was the Frederick County chair against the DREAM Act, and I actually have debated on TV and on radio Senator Ramirez, who was the author of the bill. So I'm very passionate about this issue. I'm passionate against the DREAM Act, obviously. I also am a co-sponsor of an E-Verify law here in the state of Maryland, which never came out of the drawer even for a committee vote. We obviously have a very tough Democrat hill to climb as minority party in the state of Maryland. But most importantly, I have a husband who is an immigrant. He got out of Iran before the fall of the Shah, and he did this legally. And it was really hard. And there are people lined up at our gates for the opportunity to come to this great nation. And it is not right to allow anybody to skip the line. And that's what we do essentially when we offer amnesty, when we offer any other benefits to illegals. What we are doing essentially is slapping the face of those who have done it the right way and the hard way. I've come face to face with the Immigration and Naturalization Service. There's a lot of changes I want to make to our immigration policy. One of that is chain migration. I don't believe in chain migration. We need to go to a skills-based migration system. We don't need to increase population. We need to increase our economy through global competition, and I'm against illegal immigration. Thank you.
Congressman.
During the Bush years, there were a number of bills that came to Congress that would have provided amnesty directly or indirectly. I voted against all of those bills. You can't reward bad behavior. If you reward bad behavior, you get more bad behavior, and that's what you get with amnesty. The first thing we need to do is to close the border. We have somewhere between 12 and 20 million illegal immigrants in the country. Most of them come across that border. Wow. How many terrorists might have come across that border because it's so porous? We obviously need to close the border. We need E-Verify, or some way that employers can verify that this is in fact a legitimate employee. I voted against several bills in Congress that would have punished the employer because we failed at the border. Because we fail at the border and let these people in, I'm not going to punish the employer. But we need a system which is verifiable. And E-Verify, I don't know why it's not working, but you know, it takes IRS maybe 9 months to figure out that the Social Security the number that person has is a good Social Security number, but it belongs to him and a dozen other people. It takes IRS 9 months to figure that out. And another thing we really need to do is to provide enough legal immigrants for those specialties where we aren't graduating enough people in our country to meet those needs. If we don't do that, we invite illegal immigrants, we invite these companies to go overseas. Thank you.
Senator Brink.
You know, I've traveled some for business and for pleasure. Sometimes it seems like it's easier to get into the country than it is to get on a plane. And, you know, when TSA tries to deal with some of that and restricting our own travels within, you know, the country is where we have some issues. And yet, we're then asked to not just educate people that are here illegally, but part of what the DREAM Act went to, and when I fought it in the Senate, it was about subsidizing that education. Many years ago when it was first proposed, I had the audacity to actually introduce an amendment to say, I tell you what, let's put someone who's honorably discharged from the armed services and allow them in-state tuition. You know, that amendment actually got adopted and sent the bill back to committee because they couldn't swallow that that part might actually have to take place. What Kathy mentioned is accurate in the sense that a lot of the people who are most offended by some of what goes on in this country when it comes to illegal immigration are those who went through the process. And when I've talked to some clients and some friends and people like that that are, you know, here in this country, they say, do you know what I had to go through to get here, to stay here? And they follow the rules. And when I had the opportunity to speak about this on the Senate floor, and there were a lot of people in the gallery watching, I asked them, I said, you know, nobody served this country and died for in-state tuition. They did for citizenship, they did for freedom, they did for all the other values that we prize. That's not one of them. And so I opposed it, and I'll continue to oppose it. Thank you.
Mr. Koblenz.
Thank you. I do would like to enforce the immigration laws that are federal. We have it's the 14th Amendment, and I'd like to stop suing the states that are trying to protect themselves, especially Arizona. Thank you. I would like to see English as the official language of the United States. You see Frederick County taking up a stand for that. No birthright citizenship. I'd like to utilize E-Verify. It's free for businesses to use, and it's online. Close the border, absolutely, but that would just address the symptom of the issue. As a project manager, I look at things as what is the underlying cause. The underlying issue is benefits. No health care, no education, no food stamps, no welfare for illegal aliens. The United States spends $85 billion of your taxpayer dollars annually for illegal immigrants. Here in Maryland, $1.7 billion. Montgomery County has a deficit of $1.6 million because you guys have sanctuary cities down here, and it's crippling your economy, and it's destroying the ability for folks that are trying to find a job to get a job. Thank you.
I want to talk a little bit about illegal immigration and also about the overall strategy of this campaign, because we don't have closing statements. I would focus illegal immigration enforcement at the jails. If people are going to go around who are in this country illegally, breaking into cars, stealing GPSs and radios for fun, if they're going to be carving up our citizens or shooting wildly into innocent people, and they're in jail for committing crimes, then we should very swiftly deport them, not the endless appeals and letting them go to come back for trial. We should deport them immediately. Now, let me talk a little bit about this campaign. You're about to get a tax increase specialist lobbyist, Mr. Garagiola, for Congress. His defense to not reporting being a lobbyist, his defense is that Mr. Delaney is a loan shark. Mr. Delaney has no history of civic activism in this county. He doesn't even live in the district. Half this district is new. Roscoe Bartlett has never represented 95 precincts in Montgomery County. He has no history in those precincts. Those folks have never voted for him before. If you're not careful, you're going to end up with one of these Democrats. I'm the alternative, Robin Ficker, 2012.
Mr. James.
Yes, I'm 1/8 Cherokee, and as far as I'm concerned, you're all illegals. Now, and also think about it, when Jesus fled King Herod, what if they had an immigration policy that we have? There would be no Christians. But set aside, I'm in line with Brandon. I think trying to protect the border, especially, we don't even talk about the Canadian border, that's problematic as far as resources. Both Rob and Brandon talked about the entitlements, and the specific question was the DREAM Act. I don't support that, but it's a state issue. I wouldn't provide federal funds for that. So cutting down on, but the E-Verify thing, to me, that's like Ronald Reagan called a national ID the mark of the beast. I think there's maybe better ways. One lady asked me, and I said, well, you ask for a high school diploma, just call up their high school and see if they got one, There's a lot of other solutions before we, throw the baby out with the bathwater. But this is like, you're throwing a wedding for your daughter, and you've got some people, wedding crashers coming in, getting free drinks. Sure, I'm going to be angry too, just like you are. But I'm more concerned about the guy that's trying to defile my daughter in the back room. And the Federal Reserve loaned $7 trillion of free money to foreign banks that they're paying themselves interest with our taxpayers' money, and we're concerned about pennies when we're getting screwed over for trillions and trillions of dollars. So watch Money is Debt video. Thank you.
Well, since we don't have a closing statement, but we do have this question from the floor that you can use in that vein. It's the last question. We're going to start with Mr. Rippian. And the question is, give an example of personal leadership or accomplishment you have demonstrated I missed that part, on an issue or a personal endeavor. So give an example of personal leadership.
Well,
Mr.
thank you.
Rippian, we'll start with you.
As a businessman who's managed and operated a $100 million company with 120 full-time employees, I think that is a position of leadership and management. I have the leadership skills, the management skills, the decision-making skills, which are desperately needed in Congress, and I think that's a good example. I'd like to talk just a minute for a closing statement, if I could. Look, I admire the congressman. I deeply respect the congressman, but I ask you, what is he going to accomplish over the next 2 years that he has not been able to do in 20? I am 40 years old. Congressman Bartlett has had half of my lifetime to address and fix and correct the issues that we've talked about here today. We need to put in office someone that has a sense of urgency. We are running out of tomorrows in this country. We have to fix these problems today. Look, as a businessman, I am interested in one and only one thing, and that's results. Results are the only thing that matters. You make Brandon Rippian your next congressman, and that's what I will deliver for this country, for our district, results. Thank you.
Okay. Delegate Afzali.
Well, thank you. I am known as a leader in Annapolis. I am a barracuda when it comes to asking questions, and as part of my Ways and Means Committee, we handle tax and transportation and education in the state of Maryland. I have a past history of founding companies. I founded my own company, which I run with my husband. I am the president and CEO of the company. I have founded nonprofit organizations where I've had more than 100 people working under me at different times. But most importantly, I think what we need to know for this particular race is who is the best person to hold this seat. The current congressman has had this seat for 20 years, and we're about to lose it because of perceived weakness on his part and because of the redistricting. The two Democrat frontrunners have independently raised more money than all of us put together. The congressman has not been able to outraise money that the Democrats have raised. So when people say, well, we need to stick with an incumbent because he's the only one that can raise the money, this race will not be about money. This race will be about grassroots, because nobody up here will be able to raise the money or outraise the money as Democrats in this race. You need someone that has run a grassroots campaign. None of the two veteran politicians up here have run a grassroots campaign in the last 15 or 20 years. I've done it. I've won. I am capable. I'm different. I am different. And that's what's going to win this District 6 race. KathyForCongress.com.
Thank you. Congressman Bartlett.
I came to the Congress when I was 66 years old. In my prior life, I have been a basic researcher with about 50 papers in the literature. I then moved over into the engineering world. I have about 50 papers there. In addition to that, I have 20 patents, 19 of those military patents. When I came to the Congress, there were two issues that I really was concerned about. I'm really pleased that they now are front and center and we're paying attention to them. One is EMP. We now have a permanent task force in DOD looking at this problem in our country. The other is peak oil. The other day, I attended a conference at Johns Hopkins University School of Public Health. It was called Peak Oil, Public Health, and Food. We face some very real challenges here. For the last nearly 20 years, I've had the great honor of representing and serving the constituents of the 6th District. I have 10 kids. I have 17 grandkids. I have 2 great-grandkids. I came to Congress because I was concerned that they weren't going to have the opportunities I had as a really poor Depression-era kid to work and achieve. I'm the first person in my family to ever get a college degree. I went on to get a master's and a doctorate degree. And I'm just so concerned that our country is changing, that my kids, my grandkids, and my great-grandkids aren't going to have those same opportunities. We're still using the same handbill, palm card, that we used in the '94 election. I haven't changed one bit what I run on, because I was then concerned about my family, about their future, about the future of all of our kids and grandkids. I still run because of that concern. Thank you.
Senator Brinkley, and let me just repeat this question. Give an example of personal leadership or accomplishment you've demonstrated on a particular issue or personal.
Thank you very much. I mentioned in one of my earlier answers that I went through cancer treatments in 1989. And to that end, I'm the lead sponsor for the changing of Maryland's marijuana laws, especially when it comes to cancer patients and sick people. So the medical marijuana program that you're hearing about and watching in Maryland, I'm the lead sponsor in the Senate, along with Senator Raskin. And in that extent, it's a bipartisan effort that we're trying to move this thing forward. Why? Because we do believe that the laws that were established decades and decades ago do not apply to today's situation, as people are sick and trying to do what they can for either themselves or for a loved one. And sometimes that surprises people when they hear about a conservative Republican, but guess what? That thought and belief is endemic throughout our whole society. It's one thing to be in Annapolis and complain about the governor's budget. It's another to provide alternatives. And I've been very proud to provide alternatives, proving that we can balance the budget and not raise taxes in the process. So that's been very key. But at the same time, since this is also partly our closing statements, it's time to pass the baton. I fought the current redistricting, which split Montgomery County and has split Western Maryland. And guess what? We are together now, and it's time to make that hand the best for both communities. And I'm the person that can do that. Born and raised in Western Maryland, my business and my personal lives are down here in Montgomery County, and I believe that I can bridge that gap that's so necessary and so important. I ask you for your vote when it comes up on April 3rd. Thank you very much.
Mr. Koblenz.
Thank you. Since this is the last question, thanks again to the Maryland Reporter, AARP, and Montgomery College for putting on this event. A matter for personal leadership, I've managed million-dollar budgets. I work for higher education and implementing new software systems, and communication's 90% of what I do. I communicate with the business and IT, articulate and document our different project artifacts and project plans for successful implementations I've done time and time again. I'm also a commissioner for the Housing Authority of Washington County. I sit on the Board of Zoning Appeals, and I'm also a member of the Tri-County Council. I, too, have been grassroots. I was the county director out in Washington County for Jim Rutledge's campaign for U.S. Senate back in 2010. Although he did not win the primary, he did win Washington County by over 10%. I work hard. I have team members that work hard, and we're dedicated, and we get things done. I mentioned that living in the district is a liability. And if you don't live, let me ask you this. If you don't live in the district with the people that you represent, who do you represent? You only represent yourself, okay? That's the issue there. And then I'm running again because these issues aren't new. Debt limit continues to go up. Illegal immigration continues to be an issue. I'm not a career politician. I'm an everyday American just like you. I live on Main Street. I think if you look at it, who would the Democrats rather run against? Would they rather run against career politicians, or would they rather run against working America? Okay, I will fight for you every single day. No one has their ear closer to the ground than working America than I do. And I ask yourself, when you go to the polls to vote on April 3rd, if you haven't already, where are you going to choose? Are you going to choose consensus, or are you going to choose courage? Choose courage. I'll stand on principle. I'll fight for you. Please vote for me, Koblenz for Congress. Thank you.
Mr. Ficker.
I was born here and have lived here for more than 60 years. My ballot questions have received more than 2 million votes of support here in Montgomery County. I got the property tax limitation passed over the opposition of every elected Democrat and the Washington Post, over Mr. Garagiola's opposition. It passed in our district 56 to 44%. I'm leading the opposition against further increases in the energy tax. I'll have that question on the ballot in November. I went down and testified against the sales tax increase. Mr. Garagiola voted for it. I have a long history of civic activism here in Montgomery County. We don't need an absentee congressman. We need someone right here living amongst us. I remember how special Montgomery County used to be. It can be that way again. I grew up in a family that worked on Capitol Hill. I know how Capitol Hill works. I've completed 25,000 cases in Maryland courts, including all the Western Maryland courts. I have a base in both halves of the district. I ask for your vote on April 3rd for a Montgomery County congressman from Montgomery County.
Mr. James.
Well, this will be a long list. I went to Springbrook High School, student athlete, national merit scholar, set the pole vaulting record, won a lot of state championships. I learned how to be a champion there. Went out to California after college. My first job, I became president of Renaissance Consulting, the premier consulting company in Silicon Valley. My first client was Intel. They were the fastest growing company in the world at that time. They needed to get their costs under control, so I developed a cost evaluation system for them. I went on to work for several Fortune 500 companies, multi-billion-dollar companies. Me and my brother then built a 30-man consulting company and got it up to 2 million, not 100 million, but my dad didn't give me the business. Sorry, Brand, that was a cheap shot. But we went out, Lytton got stuck. They had 200 programmers trying to get the Saudi Arabians' AWACS logistics system work. We went in there. I developed a system that automated all the programming of it. And with 30 guys, we went in and got it done. And we got exit visas for their poor managers that they weren't going to let leave the country till they got it done. I was president of the Kiwanis Club in Germantown. I won the Growth Award, the Membership Growth Award for the Capital Area District. And I've raised 2 kids, hopefully successfully. There's no drug problems or crimes and things that are being committed, at least that I know about. And try to get people to turn over their Federal Reserve notes for these monies. I'm building a farm up on Brink Road, totally funded with money I've created out basically out of thin air, just like the bankers do. But the jury's still out. But I want to save our economy, whether you send me a Congress or not, with just money. So please go to peterjames2012.com, Look at the Just Money video and all the other videos that are out there. And I also was the nominee in District 4 in 2008 when everybody thought I didn't have a chance. Thank you.
And for our last statement, Mr. Christoforski.
Personal leadership, personal pride. In 2003, when Hurricane Isabel hit Maryland, I organized a group of 50 volunteers to assist in the effort leading up to Israel, up to the hurricane, and then the effort in recovery and cleanup after it. And I did that of my own accord. I got commended by the governor as well as 2 county executives about that. I'm a businessman. I started out as an educator. I went into business. I started companies, and I brought companies public. I hired people. I brought jobs to Maryland in 1986. I lived in the 6th District. I've worked in the 6th District up until this redistricting. And I will say it, Robin, you didn't say it, so I'll say it. I currently cannot vote in the 6th District. However, I have a real estate agent, and I'm moving back to the 6th District to be back in the 6th District and represent the people that I've been working with, living with, and campaigning with for the last year. That's my dedication, that's my commitment, and that's personal leadership. I've stood up in front of boards of directors. I've told them what was right and what was wrong, even when my job was on the line. It did not matter to me. What the important thing is that you stand up for your principles and you do what's right. You do what's right for your employees, you do what's right for the citizens, you do what's right for the country. And that's what I'll do for the residents of the 6th District. Come general election and come January when I'm elected. Right? I will be living in the 6th District by the time the general election comes around. And Robin, you don't buy a new home in 2 days. It takes a while to figure out where you want to live and where you want to raise your family. You just don't do it overnight. All right? And I'm out there and I'm looking. Joe Christoforski, running for Congress, jtkforcongress.org. Thank you.
Let's give a round of applause for all the candidates, and we'll welcome up to the stage AARP Maryland State Director Hank Greenberg for closing remarks.
Thank you all. Thank you all very much for coming today. We want to thank the candidates. If you haven't had a chance to come to our table at AARP, please do so. We are working across the nation to get your feedback on Medicare and Social Security because you've earned a say. So please have your say by completing and dropping off a brief questionnaire with us at the table. Thank you to Len Lazarick and to Reporter-AARP, and thank you to the candidates and to you all for coming. Thank you.